So welcome to Master Chef at Home. My name is Steve Weiss, and we're here in my kitchen, and we're going to be making some salt pretzels today. Um, One of the things that I enjoy doing when I go to the boardwalk or if I go to the mall is try to seek out a soft pretzel. I know when we're all out, it's one of the things that we go to, that or pizza, which is one of the things that I had last night. But soft pretzels are a fun thing to do, and this is a really easy recipe to make. And if you aren't following along today, I hope you follow along in the recorded version, and you can just do it at your leisure. Okay. All right. So let's just go over the ingredients real quick on what you're going to need to make soft pretzels. All right. So if we can pan down the camera here, my executive producer is here with me, so she's actually taking care of the camera. Um, so we have some flour here, and if you look at your recipe, you'll see there's a volume measurement, and then there is a actual weight measurement. So you can use either or. I've tried both. They both work. I really like using weights at all times when I can. If I can convert everything into weights, I will definitely do that. So the cup version of the flour in this particular recipe can be easily converted into a mass weight, which is 1 pound 9 ounces, which is what you see right here, 1 pound 9 ounces of flour. Okay. Now, typically too, when I talk to my students, I will tell them to put all of the liquid in first, but because this is a straight dough method, what we're going to do is at this point, because the mix is so small, we can just add everything at one time. And what I'm going to do is, well, it's not going to be actually at one time, but it's going to be a little at a time. But I'm going to say, as you measure it, you can just start putting it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on the dry ingredients. Okay, so I'm going to take all the flour. So again, this is 1 pound 9 ounces of flour. Okay, and we're going to add that. Okay, make sure you get all the flour out. And we're going to need a tablespoon of salt. Okay, so I'm going to take some kosher salt. Now you could use regular table salt or iodized salt. You could use sea salt. Whatever salt you have is fine. A lot of times in bread recipes, they want you to use really super fine salt that's been really refined, because it dissolves easier. Okay, so we're going to put that into our mix there. Okay, we're also going to need a teaspoon of yeast. Okay, so we're going to take a teaspoon of yeast. Okay, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about yeast. Okay, so a teaspoon of yeast. Now this is active, this is instant active dry yeast. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about yeast before we move forward. So the instant active dry yeast there's 3 varieties of yeast that you can easily get. One is cake yeast or compressed yeast. It comes in a block. It's mixed in with cornstarch, right? So it has a nice spongy consistency. The issue with that yeast is that it doesn't really last that long in the refrigerator, because it does need to be refrigerated. A lot of times I remember in the industry when I used to buy big cases, and the yeast cakes used to be about a pound each, because we used to do large amounts of bread. They would end up molding up a lot. All right, and they're very difficult to freeze too. So that type of yeast is good for those who like to use that yeast, and that's fine if you. But the issue is that you have to hydrate it beforehand. So we would have to take that yeast and we would have to put it in with water to hydrate it. I like to streamline the way we do things in regards to how we interact with students. And I like to take as many things out of the equation as I possibly can. And that's one step that I could take out. Now also too, active dry yeast also needs to be hydrated in water. Okay, so that's something that you have to kind of think about. Now, if you're home and you're doing it at home, you have the time, you may have the time to do that, let it hydrate, which means you're gonna mix the yeast in some water, maybe sometimes put a little bit of sugar in it, just so you can get the yeast active and starting to eat everything, eat the sugar and the carbohydrates, so they can start to create their gas. That's not a bad thing if you have time to do it at home. But if you're in the industry or if you're working in a restaurant setting, a lot of times you don't have the time to do that. So I like, and I have, because there's actually a conversion that Chef Marion can pop up. There's a conversion formula that you guys should have gotten in your email that you can convert any yeast that you have in your house to instant active dry yeast. All right, so I convert all my recipes to instant active dry. So if you have compressed yeast at the house and your recipe calls for compressed, or if your recipe calls for instant active, or if your recipe calls for active dry yeast, you can convert it to instant active yeast. And instant active yeast in the store is also called rapid rise yeast. Okay. The beauty about that yeast is that you don't have to hydrate it. You can just put it into your mix. It doesn't need to be hydrated at all. You just put it in with your mix, you add your liquid, and then you just mix your dough. The other benefit to the instant active yeast is that 99% of it is still active, whereas the active dry and the compressed yeast, some of the yeast is killed in the processing. Okay, so it's more potent. So you need less of the instant active yeast than you would the active dry and the compressed yeast, right? And if it's up, Miriam has the document up, so it gives you the conversion, and that's something that you should have in your email. So if you have some yeast at home that's not instant active or rapid rise, you can utilize that formula to transition it into a usable item. Okay. All right. So we have our yeast in there, and I just want to go back to on the flour. What we're using today is we're using bread flour today. You can use all-purpose for this. All-purpose is what it states. It's an all-purpose flour. It has a protein content roughly between 10 and 12%. All right. What we're using is we're using a bread flour, and bread flours typically have somewhere between 14 and 16%. There are some bread flours that have a protein content that is a little bit higher. But right now we're going to be using bread flour. And if you don't have bread flour, I know bread flour is really hard to find. Also, too, I know that yeast is hard to find. I know it's difficult. And it took me a while to find it as well. So I purchased my bread flour online. And as probably we're purchasing a lot more stuff online, bread and yeast is available. So yeast, I would suggest, going back to the yeast too, if you want to get your yeast, and it's hard to find in the store, you can purchase a block of yeast, a 1 pound block of yeast online, and it'll stay at room temperature, as long as it's sealed, and you don't want to have any moisture in the house or in the packaging. You want to just make sure that it stays dry. It can be stored away very well, and I wouldn't put it in the refrigerator or the freezer unless it's an unopened pack. If it's an unopened pack, you can definitely put it in the freezer. I wouldn't put it in the refrigerator because the refrigerator has moisture in it, condensation, and you don't want that. So in a dry place would be fine, and it will stay for a long, long time.
Steve, I have a question about yeast.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is asking if you have fast rising yeast, quarter ounce, how much do you put in?
If you have fast rising yeast and you have a quarter ounce. So, and you don't have a scale, correct?
Let's assume not.
Okay. Well, fast rising yeast, usually those packets are quarter ounce packets. So if you have a packet, those packets are actually quarter ounce. When you buy the 3 sleeves, those 3 sleeves are actually 3/4 of an ounce total. So each packet is going to be a quarter ounce. Okay. Does that kind of help? If it does, let me know. If not, you can just kind of chime in back in on the chat, and then I'll try to answer that again.
Okay.
Okay.
She's asking, do you put the whole thing in?
Yes.
I think the thing is how to relate the quarter ounce to a teaspoon.
Oh, okay. So 1 ounce per tablespoon. So you have 2 tablespoons equals 1 ounce by volume. Okay, 2 tablespoons. So 1 tablespoon would be a 1/2 ounce. So you're looking at a quarter ounce would be equal to about 1.5 teaspoons. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. So again, yeast is really difficult to find, but again, if you buy the block, and then also too, if you have friends that are having troubles finding it too, you can always divvy it up and hand it to your neighbors and your friends as well, because I'm sure everybody's looking for. I bought a block of yeast about a week or 2 ago, and somebody else was just inquired and said, "Oh, can't find yeast," so I gave them about 3 or 4 ounces of my yeast. Okay, so and again, back to flour real quick. Flour, we're using bread flour. There are many different types of flours. There's cake flour you could purchase, soft as silk. I'm sure you've seen it for those bakers out there. There's bread flour, and there's different types of bread flour. I really like the King Arthur bread flour. King Arthur bread flour is actually a very, very good product. And I like to get the unbleached and unbromated flour. It's not processed as much. And the flour is not bleached. The bleaching process causes the flour to become more white. And it's, you know, do you want more chemicals in your body? I mean, I don't. So, I mean, I end up going that route. So I like King Arthur flour, but you can buy any bread flour you want. I mean, there's some really good products out there. All right, so let's just get back to our mix real quick because I want to get the mix going and then we can answer some more questions. Always know that we can always answer questions as we go. Chef Miriam is a very talented and knowledgeable chef on the other end, and she can answer questions even if they're not baking related. All right, you can ask some questions while you got us captured here in the time that we're going to be spending together.
Absolutely.
So we have that. So the other thing I want to tell you too before we even get rolling is that you see I'm wearing a white Blue Ridge apron, and I want to encourage some chat out there. So for you folks that want to ask a question, one of the members in our group here that asks a question, out of all that, we're going to pick one of you to get a Blue Ridge apron. We're going to send it right to your house. Okay. So we want to encourage some chat. We want to encourage some conversation. Hopefully you guys can come up with some good questions, and we're gonna keep going as we go and just ask questions. All right. So again, we have our salt in here. We have our yeast in here. We have our flour in here. And I'm just going to put this off to the side because we don't need that anymore. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to need 2 tablespoons of oil. Okay. So we're going to take 2 tablespoons of oil, and the oil is just a canola oil or any oil that doesn't add a lot of flavor to it. You don't necessarily want to put a sesame oil or a walnut oil or a olive oil. I mean, although you probably could, because olive oil has become very fashionable to use in baked items, even cakes nowadays. But if you did want to put olive oil in, you could, but a blended olive oil would probably work just as well. All right, so I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of oil in this. Okay. All right, so there's 2 tablespoons of oil. And the reason why I'm using oil in first is because the next thing that goes in is a tablespoon of honey. All right, so if I add oil to it originally, it'll help the honey come out a little bit easier. Okay, a little tip for those folks that have trouble getting honey out of their container. You can see that there's virtually no honey there. It's all oil now, or just a little residue of oil. So something really quick and easy to think about when you do that. Okay, and I'm just going to put this back there. And the last thing you're going to need is a 1.5 cups of water. So I have a 1.5 cups of water here. I'm going to add that. Okay. And what I do is, I always tell my students, what I want to do is, because if we're using a small, if we're using a larger mixer, now some of you folks might have a 4-quart or a 5-quart or a 6-quart mixer at the house. This is a 5-quart mixer. If your dough recipe is a little bit too small, the dough hook has a tendency to not get to all of the ingredients at the bottom. So what I like to do is I like to hold the dough hook in my hand, and then I like to insert the dough hook into the mix and just mix it up. Okay. And what I'm looking for, and the students will laugh about this if there are any on here, I'm looking for a shaggy mass. Okay. I'm looking for a shaggy mass because what it'll do is it'll help to alleviate the stress on the machine, and it'll also help you incorporate and make it into a nice developed dough that much faster. Okay, so a nice little shaggy mass we have going on here, and I'm going to put it on the machine. Okay. Okay, and we're going to let that mix on a medium-low speed or medium speed for about 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, now it could take a little bit longer. The other thing you might want to do too is just have a little bit of water in reserve, and I'm just going to go back here and grab a little bit of water. Okay,
Steve, I have a question about the water from Susan. She asks, what actual temperature should the warm water be?
Okay.
I use a CDN stick digital thermometer.
Okay, so what you want, as far as your water is concerned, you probably don't want to go more than about 100 to 110 degrees. I like just using tap water. If you're tap water, that's just a little bit on the warm side. I usually don't don't take the temperature of it, but you probably don't want to exceed that. You want to remember that yeast will die at about 138 degrees. So a lot of times, if you're utilizing tap water and your tap water is very, very hot, you could be killing your yeast even before you start putting your dough together. So you want to make sure that your yeast is about 100, no more than 100 to 110 degrees when you're utilizing that. And just remember that 138 degrees, I usually give a range about 137 to 139 degrees. Yeast is going to start to die off. Okay, so you want to be careful about that. Okay. So while this is mixing, you can just watch, keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the mixer really quick, and if we have any questions, we can just continue along. I'm going to give you a couple of facts here in regards to pretzels. So the pretzel was invented by an Italian monk about 610 AD, and it was he wanted to signify or document students that would be praying. A lot of times bread has bread and pastry. A baker or a pastry chef will make it significant and create some sort of edible product that will signify an event in a lifetime, right? So this is that particular event. Whereas you see a monk and he notices students that are praying. This is his characterization in bread as to what that looks like. So that, and a lot of times, a lot of food has that. There's food that has history to that. The other thing that you want to consider is what makes a pretzel a pretzel. Okay, so pretzels have to be boiled, much like bagels, right? And the reason why we boil them is because it gives it that characteristic chewiness, right? And I'm going to take a break real quick here. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit more flour, more water to this mix. Maybe about 2 teaspoons to a tablespoon. And then I'm just going to increase the speed just a tad. All right, what you want to do is you want to develop a nice smooth dough. Okay, we're going to develop a nice smooth dough with this. So again, about 4 to 5 minutes. For those of you who are following along. Okay. All right, so we're almost there. Probably got another minute or so. Do we have any questions, Mary?
Yes, but I'm answering them at the moment.
Okay, good. Okay,
yep.
Good. Okay. All right. So a little bit longer. So you can see the dough is coming away from the bowl. Okay.
Steve, could you talk a little bit about how the humidity and the atmosphere affects the dough as well?
Okay, sure. So as far as humidity goes, humidity is really good for proofing doughs. This particular dough is going to have a proof time of about, I would say about at least 2 hours, up to 3 hours. And I've already done the dough actually. All right, so this dough has actually been sitting for about 2 to 3 hours, okay? So for those of you that are following along, this is probably as far as you can go right now, and then what you'll end up doing is coming back, and you can look at and review the recording as we move forward. But what you're gonna do right now is you're gonna take this dough mass, okay? Okay, we're gonna turn that off. we're going to take this dough mass. Make sure you clean all of the pieces of dough out of it. All right, we're going to take this off the machine. And what you're going to do is, I'm going to round this up, right? Because we want to round it up very well. All right, and then what I'm going to do too is, I'm going to take a little bit of spray release, okay, and I'm going to spray it inside the bowl. Now you could just use a different bowl, it doesn't matter, you don't have to use this bowl in particular, but since we have it and it's already dirty, we're going to put that in. So we're going to put that in, and then we're going to take a little bit of saran wrap, and we're going to put this off to the side in a warm place, which brings me back to the humidity and temperature. So typically what we do when we proof our breads, we're going to proof it at about roughly about 95 to 100 degrees at 100% humidity. I know it's difficult to do that in the house, but I could tell you if you put it in a nice little sunny area of the house or a warm area of the house, it will proof up quite considerably. As you can see, this is the dough, how it looks, same dough. This is what it looks like out of the mixer. This is what it looks like about 2 to 2.5 hours later. Okay.
Steve, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
Teresa is asking, can almond flour be used instead of regular flour for this recipe?
Well, so almond flour is going to be difficult to use in this particular recipe because you need the gluten, and almonds don't have gluten, all right? And you need wheat flour to do that, unfortunately. There are probably some really good soft pretzel recipes out there that are gluten-free, but substituting almond flour isn't going to work for this particular recipe. I can say that, you know, these pretzels are going to be very similar to Auntie Anne's pretzels. So if you like Auntie Anne's pretzels, they're going to be very similar to those folks. And what you can do is you could do what Auntie Anne does. You know, when you go to the mall, you'll see that they have some sliced almonds on top. So if you did want some almonds or extra protein, they'll egg wash it and then they'll put a little bit of sliced almonds on top. Maybe it's a little sweet, so they may throw a little bit of sugar or some sort of sugar topping on it as well. And that's how you can get some almonds in this dough. But this particular dough, you don't really want to substitute any almond meal for that. Okay.
I have another question for you from Susan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is better to use to raise the dough, in a wooden bowl, metal bowl, or crockery?
Okay. I honestly don't. I would probably stay away from crockery, especially if it's porous, because a lot of times because the dough has moisture in it, and it may draw moisture away from the dough, which will cause your dough to be a little bit too dry, and it may also impede the dough from rising. Stainless steel works fine. Glass works fine. I like to oil my bowls a bit, so I just spray a little bit of oil in my bowl, and it just works fine that way. So I would stay away from the crockery, especially if it's clay. And it's not lined with anything, I would say would just stay away from that. But for the most part, stainless steel and glass works really well. Yeah, plastic too. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So what we're going to do now, so we're done with our oil, we're done with our water. Okay, I'm going to put this back here. We're done with our honey, and we're done with our yeast. So we're going to put that back there, and our salt as well. All right, because what we're going to do is we're going to free ourselves up to start sectioning out this dough. So again, for those folks that this is going to be roughly 2.5 to 3 hours later. Okay, so you see that it's puffed up quite considerably. Okay, and can we get a shot of the table? All right, so I just dumped this dough onto the table. And what you want to do now is you want to segment this up into 8 units. Okay, segment this up into 8 units. Okay. And I'm going to weigh them out. Now, if you don't have a scale, you can try to segment it up with a knife, or this is a bowl scraper. If you have a bench scraper, there's bench scrapers around, you could do that, but I like using the bowl scraper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into a rectangle, right? And if you know you're going to do 8 pieces, you can kind of segment it up into 8. Okay, you could do it that way. So half and half, okay? But that's difficult, okay? That could be difficult, all right? Because you may not get the same weight for everyone. So if you want to be more specific, what you're going to do is you're going to use You're going to use the scale. All right, and what you're going to scale these out to is 5 ounces a piece. All right, and I'm just going to show you the process of how to do that because it doesn't take very long to do that. Okay. Okay, cut it and put it in there. And if you're not at 5 ounces, you can always add more. Okay.
Turn it around.
Okay. I just want to give you guys a good shot. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay. So that's at 4 ounces right now. So I want to give you what 5 ounces looks like. Okay. So this is what 5 ounces looks like right here. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put this off to the side. Put this over here. We're just going to put that off to the side. And we're going to do some more. Okay, so again, we want to do 5 ounces each. Okay. Okay, so another 5 ounces.
Steve, while you're weighing there and measuring, got a question from Carrie. Could we use the pretzel dough for other uses?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can definitely use pretzel dough for, you can make rolls out of it, and I'm going to show you how to make some rolls today. So we can make pretzel rolls for sandwiches, and you can make sub rolls too if you'd like. It just depends on you. The other thing you could do is you can take this dough and stuff it too. So you have the mozzarella sticks. You can buy those mozzarella stick logs, and you can actually roll the dough out a little bit and kind of put the mozzarella stick, you know, and put the dough wrapped around it. Yeah, just wrap it around it, and then you can go ahead and do that. The other thing you could think about is Auntie Anne's. Can you take a strip of dough and wrap it around a hot dog and bake it off? You could do that as well. So that's an option. That's definitely an option. The other thing you could do with this dough is that you can enhance it by adding flavor to it. So chopped rosemary, you can add some chopped rosemary to it. If you wanted to add some seeds to it, like, you know, any sort of seeds that you like. If you want to add some pumpkin seeds, you know, you can do that. Yeah, so I mean, there's many options that you can do with this dough. It's also too, if you wanted to do a whole wheat version of this, you could take a portion of the flour out and add some whole wheat flour to it as well. Okay. All right, so we already have 4 right now. All right, scaling out these. Okay. Also, too, folks, on the chat, if there's anything that you guys would like to see in the future in any one of these classes coming up, please give us some ideas as some classes that you might want to see. We also have cooking classes. We have other baking type classes, and we could definitely you know, get some classes together for you folks. But you know, we're interested in wanting to know what you guys want to know. Okay. All right. All right, so we're at 5 on this. And then we have, so I only have 2 more to go, and we should be pretty close on these 2 here. Okay. All right, we're at 5 there, and we should be close to 5 here. Okay, so we're done with the mixer, so we can put that off. Done with the mixer, and we're done with the scale. So now we have all these doughs here. So what are we going to do? How are we going to take all of these doughs with these little pieces and incorporate them? So this is what I do. I'm going to spread it out a little bit. I'm going to make sure that these pieces are in the middle, okay? And then I'm going to take the furthest part away from me, and I'm going to press and make logs out of them, because ultimately what we want to do is we want to roll these out, right? Ultimately we want to roll these out. So I'm going to roll them out till I get to the corner. I'm on the seam right now. I'm going to use the palm of my hand. I'm going to smack it down a little bit, and then I'm going to let it sit on the seam, and I'm going to put it right over here. I'm going to take the next one. I'm going to do the exact same thing, okay? Press it out into like a rectangle, right? Pull it up a little bit, make a round. So you want to try to make kind of like a sausage or a cigar shape. Press it, So you can see how it's coming. I'm going to do it this way so you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay. Okay. And you can see I'm coming close to the seam here. Okay. I'm going to seal that so it doesn't come apart, and I'm going to let it sit on the seam right over there. So again, this piece here doesn't have any extra pieces. Okay. So again, making that sausage shape. Okay. And setting it up on the seam. So now what I'm going to do is, when I come back and I'm starting to roll out these shapes, I'm going to start with the one that I started with first. So that's why I'm kind of putting them in a way so that I know which one's first and which one's second and which one's third. Okay. Okay. So the next one again. Okay. And I'm going to go kind of fast with this. Okay. Okay. Again, you want to make sure your pieces are inside the dough. You don't want to put them on the outside of the dough, because if you put them on the outside of the dough, it's going to be harder to contain, right? So if I did this and I did it upside down, if I tried to roll that in that way, it's not going to work, right? Because you want to try to keep it nice and tidy. And you want to roll it in just like this. Hit that seam. Okay. Again, here we go. Okay. Hit that seam. All right, and we have one more to go. Okay. With this last one though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the seam. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some rolls out of this, because I want you to see what the rolls look like. So I hit it that way, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half. Okay. So if this was a 5-ounce piece, right now you're looking at about 2.5 ounces each. So 2.5 ounce roll each. And then what you're going to do, and we can make a couple of rolls. Okay. We can make a couple of rolls. Okay. Just so you can see how you make a roll. There's a couple of ways. Okay. You could take and put it in the palm of your hand, and you could press with your fingers, press through the hole here in the palm of your hand. Just push it right through. Okay, trying to keep your fingers closed. Okay, push it all the way through, and then pinch the bottom, and then you can make a nice roll that way. So that's a nice roll right there. Okay, all right, but when I do it, I usually make a roll by just putting it on the table, cupping it in the palm of my hand, and I'm using my thumb to keep it in the palm of my hand. And then what I do is I start to rotate it on the table. Okay, rotating it onto the table. Okay, and you can see it rounds up really nicely. Okay, I'm going to take one more. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to cut it in half. Okay, I'm going to take it, put it in the palm of my hand. I'm going to rotate it. Okay, and then you get a nice roll right there. Okay, nice roll. And we'll do one more. Okay, so even though this recipe makes 8 nice sized pretzels, and I'll show you what they look like in a bit, you can shrink this up a little bit more. You can do 4 ounces each. You can do 3 ounces each. You can make them smaller. But what I want to say to you is that you're going to need to roll them out quite long, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first piece that I did. Okay, which is right here. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to start to roll this out. Okay, at this point you can start to roll it out. Okay, so what you want to do when you're rolling these out is you want to make sure that the dough is roughly the same diameter, right? You want to try to keep it cylindrical. Start off this way, right? And then after you get to this preliminary shape, you're going to put it off to the side, okay? And then start in on the next one. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to roll this in stages, because the gluten is starting to develop. As you start to work the dough, it's starting to develop. So what we need to do is we need to do this in stages. So right now, that first dough that I rolled out is relaxing, okay? That first dough is relaxing, and I'm putting that off to the side. All right, and again, I'm lining them up. I'm lining them up exactly as I do them. I'm lining them up. So again, I'm rolling this out. Okay. Right. We're just rolling this out. Try to keep that diameter all the same. We don't want to have big ends and big middle. We want to try to have it all the same. Roll this out. Okay. Okay, and then roll this out again. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So now I'm going to go back to the first one. Okay, we'll go back to the first one again. Now I'm going to roll it out even more. So you're going to have to do this in stages. Okay, because we're developing the gluten, we want it to relax a bit. If you have a little bit more time, and after this preliminary rest, you can actually have it rest for about 10 minutes on the table at room temperature. You can see how much longer it is now. Okay, you can see how much longer it is now. Now I'm going to take this and move this up again. All right, I'm going to work a little bit more quickly here.
Why is the length important?
Okay, so the length is important because we're going to have to make our shape. All right, we need enough length to make the pretzel shape. If we don't have enough length, what we're going to do is the pretzel, after it's cooked, is going to bake together. And those characteristic holes that you see in the pretzel, those 3 holes, are going to be, they're going to be just absorbed by, they're going to be absorbed by the dough. So what we need to do is we need to make this strand as long as we possibly can, or as long as we need to create those holes so that they don't close up in the baking process. Okay.
Steve, I have a question for you from Courtney.
Yeah.
Curious, why fold them into cigar shapes instead of just rolling them out?
So the reason why we're rolling them into cigar shapes is because if we have little pieces of dough that we're scaling out, we want to make sure that those little tiny pieces are going to be incorporated in the dough. So we want to make sure that they're incorporated well. It's just a technique that I like to encourage students that if you're making a round, that's fine, make a round. But if you know that you're going to be rolling a dough out into a long elongated shape, you want to start off with the elongated shape. So it's just a technique for students to think about, this is the shape that I need, and I'm going to have to continue. And plus you're incorporating the little pieces that you couldn't incorporate, okay? It's just easier way. Yep. All right, so now we're going to be rolling this out again. Okay, so you can see how considerably much longer it is, right? You can see these shapes here. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go back to my first one, and I'm going to roll that out again. Okay. And I'm going to give you a measurement. I know there was a measurement that I put on the recipe. So as these start to relax, they'll start to allow you to lengthen these up. Okay. And I'm going to show you how to make the pretzel shape. Okay.
Can you make a pizza crust out of this dough?
Probably. Okay. All right. All right, so you see how we have a nice long piece here? Okay. All right, I'm going to just go back and do one more longer piece here on another piece. Okay. All right. I'm just going to go one more round here real quick because I want these to relax.
Are you going to measure them then?
Yes, and I will measure it, yep. And I would say yes, you could probably do a good pizza dough with this. It may work well with it for a nice pizza dough. The thing is about pizza doughs they have a tendency to be a little bit on the dense side, where pretzels and bagels are pretty much, the doughs are very similar because they can be a little bit dense, which means their crumb structure is going to be very tight. So pizza doughs, I like to have crumb structure to be a little bit more open and have a lot more holes in it. Whereas the pretzel dough and a bagel dough are similar because of the process of they have to be boiled. And technically, we're not really going to boil this. We're actually going to simmer it. So I have some water on the stove. And what we're going to do, because once we make our shapes, we're going to be boiling this. And even though, like I said, the technical word is boil, we're really not boiling them. We're actually going to be simmering them. Okay? And so what I'm going to do now is, so as far as the water is concerned, we're going to add some baking soda to the water, and a lot of times you would add lye. So lye is made of sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is a cleaning agent, okay? And in a diluted state, you could buy food grade lye and utilize that in your pretzel making. That's what they do. That's how you get that nice dark color. Although you can do it with baking soda. Now sodium hydroxide is an alkali. Baking soda is an alkali as well, okay? But it's a safer alkali. The sodium hydroxide is very concentrated, which again, it has to be diluted so you can consume it. The baking soda, the other option is everybody has it in their house. Most everybody has it. Now, baking soda also is added to certain cleaners to help clean. So, you know, there is a characteristic similarity there, but, you know, everybody has baking soda around. Not everybody has access to lye around, or food grade lye for that matter. So, which is one of the reasons why we would do it with baking soda. Now, I know Auntie Anne's does their pretzels with baking soda. They do not do it with lye. I remember working in the industry for years, and we would make pretzels with lye, and we would have to wear gloves when we did it because, you know, it's a water and lye solution, and it could be corrosive or caustic, and, you know, we just have to be careful. So using baking soda, again, the reason why I like to use it is because there's less of a mind issue that's related to it. We all have it, right? For the most part, I would imagine everybody has baking soda in their pantry. And it'll give you what you need. And the boiling method for a pretzel is the reason why we're going to boil them, as well as for bagels, if we would do bagels. It creates that characteristic top, and it kind of seals it or galvanizes or gelatinizes the exterior, right? And it impedes the growth when you go into the oven, that top layer. And it gives you that characteristic darkness and chewiness, right? We're also going to egg wash this too. So we're going to enhance it with a little bit of egg wash so that if we want to add some toppings to it, they'll stay on the pretzel and they won't fall off, okay? So that's another thing as well. I really like the baking soda method. If you don't want to do the boiling method at all, you don't have to. You can just do these without boiling them at all. You can just make your pretzels and just go from there, okay? All right, so now we've had considerable time for this to relax, which is, you know, about 5 to 10 minutes. All right, I'm going to go to my first one again. You can see these ropes are quite long. I'm going to continue to roll this out, and I'm going to do a preliminary shape, okay? So I'm going to do this on the side so you can see. Okay, do this on the side so you can see, because the camera's not behind me, the camera's in front of me. So I'm going to start off with a U shape, okay? U shape facing me, okay? I'm going to take these two pieces and I'm going to wrap them around twice, okay? So you make that characteristic knot or braid, right? And then I'm going to take these two pieces and then I'm going to move them over, right? And then I'm just going to press, all right? You want to make sure that the whole structure is there and that it's far enough apart. Now, after they proof a bit, you can actually expand them right before you put them in the solution, into the boiling solution, right? Or at this point, if you don't want to boil them, you can actually just put them on your sheet tray and just let them sit for about, I would say, anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes before you put them in the oven, okay? So I'm going to put this off to the side so you can, we can go back to that after a while. All right, so that was a good size. And I'm going to take a ruler here. I'm going to give you an idea as to what the length would be. So we're looking at about about 30,
26, 28.
yeah, about anywhere between 28 and 30 inches, okay? Anywhere between 28 and 30 inches, okay? So again, I'm going to come around here. Now, again, if you go too small with the length, you're going to have a tendency of the holes closing up during the baking process. So again, I'm going to wrap once, wrap twice, fold over, and then we have our pretzel shape once again. Okay? All right, and I'm going to put them down onto the table. Okay? All right, we're going to take this again. Okay? Kind of re-roll it a little bit. Wrap it again. Keep it on the table. Okay, wrap it. And then I'm going to put this off to the side. Same thing. Okay. Okay, so after we get done with this, we're going to take them over to the boiling solution. And I'll show you how to get that done. Okay. All right, so you can see this goes pretty quickly. So think about what you can do with this dough too, right? Can we add some sesame seeds to the dough? Can we add jalapenos, chopped jalapenos to the dough? All right, would be an excellent idea would to take the dough and maybe take a couple tablespoons of chopped jalapenos. And if you're going to use the jarred version, I have some here I can show you. Take the jarred version, right? And we can drain some of the liquid out of it and then add it to the dough. After it comes out of the mixer, you can kind of knead it into the dough. And then you can create your shapes, right? And then what you can do after it's baked is you can take a little bit of a slice of cheddar cheese and put it in the oven so it melts over top of it. Or you can even do it if you save it for the next day. You can take it, put it in the microwave, put a nice slice of cheese on top of it, and just hit it in the microwave for about 20 or 30 seconds, just so it has a nice melt on top of that. So you can make a nice jalapeno cheese pretzel, which would be really pretty neat to do as well, right?
Steve, I have a question for you from Patricia.
Yeah.
If you skip the boil step and go straight to baking, how does that affect the end product? Does texture change?
So the texture doesn't, the texture as far as the color will change, okay, because you're just using egg wash. It's not going to have that alkaline to it, and it may not be as chewy, although I can say that I've tried it before, and they're very rustic. They're not going to look the same, but I do believe that the baking soda and or lye does give some sort of characteristic flavor to it. I do believe that, but it's just not going to be quite the same. It won't be quite the same, but the crumb structure shouldn't change that much. Okay. All right, so you can take a look down here at the pretzels. So maybe just do a quick look at the pretzels that we have. Okay. And again, you can expand these holes out a little bit if we need to. Okay. And we also have our rolls here. Remember we did 4 rolls? We have our 4 rolls, and the rolls are going to be boiled as well. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to start to take these over to the boiling solution, and I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to see that. So what I'm going to be using here is I'm going to be using regular baking soda. Okay. And I'm going to take the baking soda and just fill this 1/3 cup up. Right. So I have 1/3 cup of baking soda, and I'm going to bring it over here to our water solution here. Okay, I'm going to add that to, now this is 2 quarts of water. Okay, and what you want is you want this baking soda to dissolve. You want this baking soda to dissolve. And it starts to foam up pretty instantaneously, especially if you have your water already on. Right, so this is on a simmer. I've already pre-boiled this. Right, so now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking our pretzels and I'm going to add them to the solution. Okay, now if you wanted to let them sit for about 10 minutes to 15 minutes or 20 on the counter, that's fine too. Right, so I'm going to leave them in there on one side for about 10 seconds, and I'm going to flip them for another 10 seconds. Okay. All right, I'm going to flip them. Now, if you wanted to take the ropes and do ropes and make little pretzel bites, you could do that as well. Pretzel bites are like really popular nowadays. Okay, then I'm going to take this and I'm going to transfer it to a lightly greased sheet tray. Okay, lightly greased sheet tray. Create that pretzel shape that we want. All right, and I'm going to go and get the next pretzel. Okay. Okay, so again, about 10 seconds. Again, what you want to be careful with this is that you don't want to overcook the dough too much, because if you keep it in the solution too much, remember that 137 to 139 degrees, we want to make sure that we don't exceed that, because we're going to have an issue with our yeast, and our yeast is going to die, right? We don't want that to happen, okay? Okay. If you have a bigger pot, you can do 2 at a time if you want. Okay. So when I talk to students too, and I've never tried this, so I was curious, you know, what does it impart any flavor? You know, we're doing it in water, but if we were going to do bagels, and since bagels and pretzels are pretty close or similar in the process, what could you use? I mean, will it impart flavor if we use chicken stock? If we use chicken stock with this, would that change the flavor? If we took this and maybe added some turmeric to the water, would that change the flavor of the dough on the exterior and the color, obviously? Would that be different? We were just playing around with maybe wine one day. If we did our solution in wine, would that change it? You know, so there's options that you could play around with at home with this recipe, that I think you might find more things out than even I know at this point, just for the fact that you're going to experiment with it, right? Okay. So again, we're going to add our pretzels again about 10 seconds on each side. So what we're doing is we're creating that characteristic gelatinized exterior. And then we're going to egg wash these and then add some toppings to it. Just drain it out really well. Okay. And if they're connecting together, that's okay a little bit. Typically, I don't prefer that, but it's okay to do that. It's okay to do that because it reminds me of the Philadelphia pretzels that you can find when you're obviously in Philadelphia. They're always the best. If you go to Wawa, if you know what a Wawa is in the area, Wawa pretzels are really great pretzels. Okay. All right. So again, for those folks that have made the dough and you're going to let it sit for about 2 to 3 hours, you're going to basically come back to the recording and just follow through from that point on. Okay. The beauty about having these classes recorded is that you can always go back as a refresher and look and see, you know, if there's something that you might have forgotten, or maybe something that you know, you just want to continue with. All right. So again, this is the last pretzel, and then I have the rolls. I'll put all the rolls in at one time so you can see what that looks like. Okay. Now, the oven temperature is going to vary. We have a double oven here. So we have a double oven here, one top and the bottom. Bottom is convection oven. Not everybody has that, but if you have a convection oven, that's perfectly fine. I like to use conventional oven on this, so you don't need to have a convection oven. I bake mine at about 425 degrees, but your oven may be a little bit different. So you're just going to have to do a batch, or maybe do a test one, and then you can kind of make a decision on if that's a good temperature for you.
Can you use a toaster oven?
Yes. So actually, a toaster oven is you can use that, because a lot of times toaster ovens have a capacity to utilize a convection status. So you can definitely do that. So what I did was, when I put these rolls in, I put them in the side that I'm going to be looking at first. So it's actually went in upside down. Okay. So the side that was on the table is facing me now, right?
That side up.
Yep. And then the round side is down in the water. So now I'm flipping them over about 10 seconds, right? And then I'll transfer them onto another sheet tray. Okay. After about 10 seconds. Okay, pick these guys up and put them over onto the tray. You can turn off your water and baking soda solution. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my egg wash, and I have egg wash here. Okay, we're going to be grabbing our egg wash. And right now I'm going to do is I'm going to egg wash the tops of this. So this is one egg and 1 tablespoon of water. Okay, and I just mixed it up. I'm using a brush here. I'm going to brush on top. Okay, brush a little egg wash on top. Now, if you wanted to try some without egg wash, you could do that too, just to see what it looks like. Okay, it doesn't come out as shiny like a pretzel would, right? But it has a rustic look to it. If you want to even have a more rustic look to it, you could take a little bit of flour and just throw a little bit of flour on top of it too. Lightly dust with a little bit of white flour. Okay. Right, so at this point too, now what you could do is you can add some sliced raw almonds, right? Sliced raw almonds on top. Okay, now these rolls too. You want to put your rolls up there.
Steve, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you were going to fill this dough like you had suggested with a hot dog or some kind of filling,
Yeah.
would you still use the lye method, or would you just go right to the baking?
So typically that's done with Auntie Anne's. Typically that's done with the baking soda solution. So what you would do is you wouldn't boil it. Don't boil it. Just wrap it.
Okay, thank you.
And then just do egg wash on top, because the egg wash will keep it together. Okay. All right. So we have a couple of toppings that we could use. We have some sesame seeds, so we can sprinkle some sesame seeds on top, which is one of my favorite Auntie Anne pretzels, the sesame seed. Right. You could take some salt, and this is sea salt. Okay. It's got a coarse grind on it, so you could take and just put a nice light bit of sea salt on there. Okay. I think going too much, I always have a tendency when I eat pretzels, if there's too much salt, which there usually is, I usually take that off or rub it off, right? Okay. Now the other thing you could do is you can leave a couple plain if you want to, or at this point, if you wanted to, I have some roasted garlic and rosemary and sea salt blend. Okay, you could take some of this and sprinkle some of this on there.
Could you put cinnamon on?
You could put cinnamon and sugar on this as well. So if you want a kind of a dessert one, and then you can also make a little bit of a chocolate dipping sauce, and you could kind of use a chocolate dipping sauce with the cinnamon one. It would be kind of neat to do.
What about chocolate chips?
Yeah. So chocolate chips would also be one as well. All right. So now the rolls. So the rolls, we're just going to put a little bit of salt on those. All right, a little bit of salt. All right, and then what I'm going to do before it goes in the oven, I'm going to take a knife and I'm just going to cut down the middle. Okay, I'm going to score it a little bit down the middle so that it opens up and has a characteristic pretzel look to it. Okay, so these will open up as they go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop these in the oven. Okay, we'll close it up. And we can see that we have these done already. All right, so we have.
How long?
So they're going to be in there for about 25 to 35 minutes at about 400 to 425 degrees. Okay, so you can see we have our mustard here. We have, these are the size of the pretzels. The pretzels are going to be pretty big. Okay, pretzels are going to be a pretty big size. And we have different varieties. We have salt. These are our rolls. These are what the rolls are going to look like. You can see they have that characteristic cut in them, right? And I would say that, and also too, what you could do is, what I usually do if I'm going to store these away, when they come out of the oven, they're going to be a little bit hard on the outside. It's going to take a couple minutes for it to get soft. Okay, that's typical. That happens. Okay, so what you'll do after they fully cool is you're going to take these and put them in gallon bags, right? And then you could just seal them off. And then the next morning, honestly, I think these taste better the next day than they do right out of the oven. I know that's hard to believe, but I really like them the next day because I think they're chewier for me, right? I think it's I like to store them in this, and also too, you can give them away in this as well, okay? Right, and then this is, I can show you can rip it apart, and you can kind of see the crumb structure inside. It's very typical of a pretzel, yep, right? So the other thing that we want to do too is when they come out of the oven, this is an added step. When they come out of the oven, okay, so we'll pretend that this came out of the oven, added step. Okay, so added step, when they come out of the oven, what I like to do is I like to take some melted butter and put some nice melted butter on top.
You can add garlic to it.
And you can add your seasonings on top of the butter so it'll adhere. You can do that as well. So this one is a garlic bagel, or I'm sorry, bagel. I have bagel in my head. This is a garlic pretzel. So this has the seasonings that you saw with the rosemary and the sea salt. And this is similar to what Auntie Anne's. Now Auntie Anne's would do is they would dip it in an oil butter solution. They would dip it in an oil butter solution, and then they would sprinkle the seasonings on top, okay? So we just did it a little bit different. If you want to make a plain bagel, take the butter and put that on top of it, and then put some seasonings on top after it comes out of the oven. I think it would be excellent, okay? All right, does anybody have any questions?
We've been answering the questions as pretty much as we went along.
Okay.
Courtney did ask, does Auntie Anne's use butter in any part of the preparation process? And you just actually answered that.
Okay.
So yes, that's where we are at the moment. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, from Sarah, she asks, how would you add the hot dog? Would that change the baking time?
Well, so what you'll do is you'll take that individual unit, and what you're going to do is you're going to roll it out into a strip, but you're going to use a rolling pin and there'll be like a flat strip, and then you would wrap the hot dog. Now you probably won't need the full 5 ounces. You might only need, because depending on the size of the hot dog, you're going to need maybe a little less. Do you just want to wrap the hot dog enough so that the ends are kind of sticking out, and then you have the dough wrapped around it, kind of in a spiral pattern?
You're going to boil the hot dog first?
No. So you're going to bake this, so the hot dog does not need to be pre-cooked. The hot dog is going to be raw. You're going to wrap it with the raw dough, and you're going to bake it in the oven.
Right, and it would depend on each individual's oven for how long that would be.
Oven. Yeah, I would try it. I would try it for a little bit of time, maybe at 400 degrees. Now remember, when you put the dough wrapped around the hot dog and it's raw, you want to make sure that you egg wash it, because the egg wash will help to keep those layers together. And when you roll the hot dog in with the pretzel dough, you want to overlap it. So you don't want any gaps. You want to make sure that they're overlapped by maybe a quarter inch every time you wrap it. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see, from Carrie, she said, not a question, but I just want to thank Chef Steve for his time. What a welcome reprieve from this time of isolation. So grateful.
Oh, thank you.
June said to everyone, thank you, Chef.
Much
and Sarah
appreciated.
said thanks. From
Appreciated.
Courtney, she said, thank you, chefs. This was fun. Our dough is hanging out in the sun.
Okay.
We got a question from June asking if there will be more Zoom classes. And we also got suggestions for one on Thai cuisine and one on handheld pies.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. I mean, all great classes. And yes, we're going to continue with our Zoom classes. Master Chef as well as other classes have kind of morphed into this format. And it's unique and it's different. And I think you experiencing us at home is kind of maybe, kind of the new norm for now. And we hope that we can go back to where we originally were. But right now, I think this is good. This is entertainment. It's a lot of fun. We had a blast bringing it to you. Yeah, and enjoy your food. Enjoy your pretzels as much as we're going to enjoy them, because I have a lot.
All right. Thank you, Steve. If there's no more questions, I think we're going to.
You want to choose your our apron person?
Oh, yes. Okay. Let's see. I don't know. Did we get really? We got some really interesting questions.
Okay. Even if there's a question that they ask you, Miriam, you can even pick from that.
Okay. Well, you know
was
what?
Was there one that stumped you?
No.
Okay.
I didn't actually stump it, but Kevy was wonderful, and Kevy is also one of our faculty members, and she is kind of monitoring this class to kind of see how we do them. So Kevy stepped right in there, and she gave the answer for that, for how where to get gluten-free products.
Okay.
Let's see. You know what? I am going to award the apron to Susan Richman.
Okay.
Yep. And hopefully as we do these classes and you all sign in, we'll get around to everybody and get everybody an apron. That would be terrific.
And I want to thank everybody that was part of this Zoom meeting. Miriam and Cindy and Kevy and and Annette, everybody that was involved in the background there for support. Much appreciated. This is our first MasterChef Zoom, and we're hoping to have a lot more. All right, so look for us. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Goodbye,
Thanks,
everybody. Thank you for
Bye.
joining us.